Welcome back. I'm Pope, and this is Project 818 SRX. Didn't get as early a start on the car today as I had hoped. It seems to always be the way. Woke up this morning, found out my truck got broke into last night. There wasn't a whole lot in there to be stolen, but they stole my insurance and registration information and some banking stuff. So instead of coming out here at 8 a.m. this morning and getting started on the gaskets, I had to contact my insurance and get proof of insurance and go to registries and get a copy of my registration and wait forever at the bank because I didn't have an appointment to get some things canceled and get new cards. Just one headache after another. However, I have got a little bit started. I got a little bit of work done. I got the exhaust off and I've got the turbo manifold off. I just want to show you something right here. Nice thing about the 818 is with the rotary is I have room. If you can see, I've actually been able to leave the turbo and manifold all as assembly, all the lines to it, all the wires, and just pull it out of the way and get the old gasket out. And I'm just using a tarp strap there to hold it up. So that turned out to be really, really convenient. So I'm just going to bring you over here to the workbench. So these are the original gaskets. As you can see, this one here is after peeling back, so it's no good. That's what came on the car. This one here is not in bad shape. They say they're reusable. So it's a multi-layer steel design. This is what Mazda uses. They've gotten more and more expensive. I think at the dealership they want it close to $200 each Canadian. I think online they go from anywhere from 75 to 100 each US. Not cheap, but apparently there's no substitute. I tried this guy. I got it used. Again, they're said to be reusable. And I got it for free off a friend. And I tried to use it. It's this graphite style. You can find it all over the internet. And mixed reviews. A lot of guys will say don't use it. Some guys say that it works out fine. The guy I got it from said that's all he uses and it's fine. But it wouldn't even hold under idle. It's just junk in my opinion. It warped quite a bit. It looked like new. It was pretty flat when I put it on there. It's after separating here. I think they're only like 15-20 bucks, maybe a little more. Anyway, you get what you pay for. So I contacted Adam at rotaryengine.com. They're based out of Calgary. And I originally had sent in to order 2 of these. And he emailed me back and said, hey, try this guy. It's the same design. It's this multi-layer steel. I mean, it's when you look at it, it's made the same way. But it was considerably cheaper. I think it's about $90 US. I think it was like $120 by the time everything was said and done in Canadian. So we're gonna give that a try, and fingers crossed it works. I mean, it's not a huge pain in the ass to change the gaskets now, but it will be come time everything else is installed. Now, before I go ahead and install this new gasket, the turbo is kind of pulled up out of the way a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and change my lower intake manifold gasket, which I thought was in great shape, the one that was on there. But when I went to go do a boost leak test with this little guy, which is very important, we'll go through that later, it was leaking like a sieve. So I'm going to attempt to change out the lower intake manifold gasket without removing anything from the intake manifold. So wish me luck. So I did get it off, and while there's no obvious signs as to why it leaked, you can kind of see where it leaked. See if I can zoom in on this a bit. Right here you can see this is all, it's not gas, it smells like that Marvel Miracle Oil that I used when I was trying to free up the apex seals. I think I mentioned that in the first drive video. I remember we had all that smoke. So it seems like that has seeped through. No doubt there's still lots of it kicking around in the engine. It wasn't running for that long since I did that. So you can see it leaked by here, but the edges around it seem quite intact. However, the whole thing is quite compressed. It's also slightly different in design, but not by much than the replacement. But it served its purpose, I guess, but now we're done with it. So I'll get this new one installed. Now, some of you might be wondering, why did I do it this way? Why did I try to keep everything intact? Well, the main reason, I was lazy and I didn't want to have to disconnect a bunch of lines. I was going to see if I could do it without it, with the turbo out of the way. The main reason though is I don't have gaskets right here or at the throttle body or the throttle body spacer. It's all silicone. I didn't have gaskets for up here. There was so much porting to fit this GM throttle body, the LS3 throttle body, that there was no gasket that was going to work, so that had to be siliconed. And over here, I don't know if you can notice it from there, but I've got a spacer in here. I got a Philonic spacer, 1 inch. I could be saying that wrong, so let me know in the comments. But it's a spacer here, the idea being that I won't be transferring a bunch of heat from the lower intake manifold, which is bolted to the motor and close to the turbo. I won't be transferring that to the upper intake manifold. So if I can keep the upper intake manifold cool, then what are the chances that the air is going to heat up that much going through just the lower intake manifold versus letting it all heat up and radiate and cause more trouble? So I tried it and I can do it successfully. So I'm just going to clean up a little bit of on the flanges, a little bit of oil. I can see that Marvel Miracle Oil that seemed to have gotten everywhere in there, and then bolt on the new gasket. So I finished installing the turbo manifold. I also did the intake plumbing. Everything has been torqued to spec, which always feels like it's not tight enough, which is probably why things leaked before, because it probably wasn't. I didn't torque it properly. So we'll see. We're going to do a boost leak here in a second. But while I got everything apart, I had good access to install my 2 pressure sensors. So I've already got my fuel pressure sensor installed. That's a 100 psi AEM unit. I installed it in the same spot the factory fuel temp sensor was. So I won't be running a fuel temp sensor. Not sure that that's something critical to monitor, but the fuel pressure certainly is. So I've got a little adapter, metric to 1/8 MPT adapter in there for that. And then the oil pressure sensor, I took the factory unit out. That's just an analog unit that went to the gauge on the dash. It's no good to me to plug into the AEM unit. So I'm using 150 psi AM pressure sensor. And what I did is the adapter that had the factory unit plugged into it, I just took that and drilled and tapped it to 1/8 MPT. So kind of made my own 1/8 MPT to metric adapter. And I'll install that in the factory location. When I go to rebuild the block, I might just tap the block out to 1/8 MPT just to eliminate one more connection. But that's not something I want to do until I have the engine apart. I could have installed it on the sandwich plate, the oil filter sandwich plate. That's where I have the temp sensor. However, it would have been sticking out a little too far for me to be comfortable with, and I'd rather it get tucked in underneath and there's no chance of knocking it. So I'm just going to screw that in, and then I got some wires to run. I had already have the wires run for both sensors sorry, I have the signal wires ran. So I just need to run some sensor grounds and tap into one of my other sensors, like the throttle body or the map sensor, something else that's 5 volt, and tap into those for power. So I'm going to get that all wired up before I get the exhaust in the way, and I can't sit on the transmission, which is a pretty handy position to be able to sit. I can't imagine it's as easy to change out those 2 gaskets on an RX-7. So it's kind of worked into my favor. So I'm going to get everything installed, and then we can start installing heat shields and exhaust and wing mount and rear bumper, and then I can start wiring the rear bumper lights and move on to the wiring mess. So I've got my sensors installed. Now it's time to move on to the exhaust and heat shield. I actually had the exhaust installed and then realized that I couldn't install my heat shield with the exhaust installed. So I kind of got to get the heat shield in there, get the exhaust installed, and then bolt the heat shield on. When I made the heat shield, I actually made it in 2 pieces, took it apart, welded it, painted it, and I'm realizing now that maybe I should have left it in 2 pieces, but it's not a big deal. So here's the heat shield. Well, you can see in here the weld marks. I've left the underside nice, shiny stainless steel. My thinking that it would reflect heat, and then the black side, which is going to be exposed to everything else in the engine bay, you know, black to absorb heat, and of course for looks. I'm not sure if the shiny versus the flat black makes a big difference, but I didn't see any reason to paint the underside, and the top side looks better painted. So we'll get this tucked in here, and then I'll install the exhaust. Shield design that all the air will come in through that vent, and what doesn't get sucked into the turbo, because the intake is right there as well, will get channeled along that heat shield and help get that hot exhaust out. So with all the extra cutouts in the bumper, the vent right above the muffler, I'm hoping to keep all the heat to this side. We'll see how that goes, but that's the plan as of now. I'd like to install another heat shield between that heat shield and the lower intake manifold, because right now the exhaust manifold is still exposed to the lower intake manifold. So if I put another one in there and then there's a little bit of a gap between them, that's going to be that much better of an insulator. It's just not something I'm going to focus on right now. Right now I want to just get the car ready to get registered. So we'll stick with this heat shield for now and add that later. As much as I want to install the wing mount and the bumper and get this all buttoned up, now's the best time to do a boost leak test, because I can still step in here and tighten things as opposed to reaching over everything. So all I'm going to do is install this guy, which is just a piece of pipe that I capped off, and I'll hook it up right to my compressor, and there's a regulator on the compressor, so I'll start at 0 and just dial it up to 15-20 psi. The only tricky part is with the rotary is it's hard to get a seal, because the air wants to go past all the seals, so I might have to rotate the engine slightly till I can find a point where I can get the best seal. When I did it before, I didn't get a perfect seal. There was always a little bit of air coming out the exhaust, but that's not the end of the world. I was able to see the other leaks. So if I gotta go, a little higher in pressure, that's fine. I'll still notice the other leaks. So that's next. So I performed my boost leak test. You can see there's my little fitting instead of having my air filter to the turbo. There was no leaks I could find in the intercooler piping. Most of that was already checked before. Unfortunately, both of my new gaskets leaked, but I was able to just tighten up the flanges, and I think I got them good. But my V-band on my exhaust leaks like a sieve. Now, I put this bag on the exhaust because I was not able to get the engine to fully seal. So the air I was pushing through the engine was leaking by into the exhaust, and it was flowing out of around the V-band clamp so much that I'm just not fully confident that I don't have any boost leaks because I wasn't able to build a substantial amount of pressure. There was definitely a little bit in there, but probably only a couple of pounds. So until I get a new clamp to fix that or solve the misalignment issue, whatever it is that's causing that leak, I'm just not going to be able to fully boost leak the engine. So I'm going to move on from that right now. What I am going to do is Full Race Motorsports in the US. They actually sell the most EFR turbos of any aftermarket, I believe. And they have a V-band clamp that they advertise as for the Borg Warner EFR turbo. I can't really find a whole lot of mention on the internet about anyone else having this issue, but the regular V-band clamp I bought required quite a bit of grinding just to get it to fit. So I'm gonna order this one. Unfortunately, while it's only $30, it's like $55 to get shipped. So it's gonna cost me over $100 Canadian by the time I get this V-band clamp. So I'm gonna call them and make sure this is exactly what I need. So I'll get that. There's a small chance that I have some misalignment on the flange, and it's just not getting, pulled snugly because I'm using the wrong clamp. There's a small chance I might have to bend the exhaust a little bit, which wouldn't be that hard. But I'm just going to start with the proper clamp before I do anything else with it. I'm just going to move on. So now I'm going to mount my wing mount, which I'm not sure I've shown anyone yet. I don't think there's any pictures on the build thread or anything of that. And then mount the bumper with my nice new cutouts and the taillights mounted. And then I can wire up my taillights. So let's get on that. So there's my wing mount. It's all aluminum, including these guys here. So it's aluminum swag tubes and aluminum rod ends. So the steel bolts are actually the only part of this that are steel. So the whole thing only weighs a couple of pounds. I was able to roll this to a curve that matches perfectly with the bumper. So I can actually attach my bumper to it, make it a little sturdier. And then the plan is to have some wing stanchions come right up off of these through the hood to mount, or through the deck lid to mount the wing. And what do you say we test its weight rating? Well, doesn't seem to have any problem supporting 260 pounds. I'm not going to be generating that much downforce in the rear. until I get a lot more aggressive with some front downforce. So it's more than sturdy enough. I'm quite happy with this. So next up, I'm going to mount my air oil separator right here on the side of it, and then we can bolt on the bumper. There's the catch can mounted. Nice easy drain to get through. I'll be able to just put a bucket underneath there and drain any oil out. I've got two -10 lines coming from each side of the motor. So one goes to right here. This is the oil fill tube, which actually vents down on the left side of the motor, and the second line comes down here and actually tees way down there on the oil drain for the rear turbo, which I'm not using because I'm just using the front turbo because it's no longer twin turbo. So that's how it looks, and it will just clear the engine cover, no problem. So that about wraps up this video. Got quite a bit accomplished on my list. Still lots left to do. The next thing I'm going to do isn't really good for filming, so I figured I'd finish the video here. I'm going to be moving into the cockpit, finishing wiring up the lights, neutral safety switch, the brake switch, lots of little odds and ends to finish that are very appealing. The next video, hopefully all the lights will be working. And most importantly, is my new dash will be installed. This is what I was hoping to get to over my holidays, and I still got a few days left, and fingers crossed. But I want to get this dash installed. This is the AEM CD7, so I'm really looking forward to showing you guys this. It's just a little bit of eye candy that I think everyone will appreciate when they see the car, and it's nice to not be trying to adapt the Subaru dash or even the Mazda dash. It just makes it unique to the car, and makes the car unique from being a kit car, from having another manufacturer's dash installed. So I'm really excited to get that installed. There's lots of other goodies that came with it that I'll tell you about later once it's all installed. So to the next video. In the meantime, thanks for watching. If you can like, subscribe, I'd appreciate it. And peace. Have a great day.